The far right love to speak about Western culture. They claim that they are the defenders of Western culture. This is quite laughable. For starters, what is Western culture? Western Europe is home to countless different cultures. Many of these cultures have few, if any, similarities. Western Europe is not some homogeneous cultural bloc. Like any geographic area, it is a place of diverse cultures. There is no singular, monolithic Western culture. What defines the West? What cultural forces define the West? To the extent that there is such a thing as Western culture, this can largely be seen as a culture born out of the Enlightenment. Modern Western culture is largely inseparable from the Enlightenment and its values. What are the values of the Enlightenment? Reason, progress, individualism, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law. The far right hates these values without exception. They regard these values as the characteristics of the modernity that they despise. Many of them openly reject reason, all of them implicitly reject reason. All of them hate progress, they despise individualism and argue for extreme collectivism. They hate freedom and argue for highly authoritarian government structures. They despise democracy and argue for dictatorial political systems. They hate equality, perhaps more than anything else, and they regard the rule of law with disdain. The far right hates the values of the Enlightenment. Enlightenment values are inseparable from any serious conception of Western culture. Enlightenment values are inseparable from any serious conception of a Western civilization. And yet the far right openly hates Enlightenment values. In fact, far-right ideology is largely defined by a rejection of Enlightenment values. And now these people claim to defend the culture of the West? They claim to be the great defenders of Western culture and civilization, as they try to eradicate the values that define it. These people are an enemy within. They seek to destroy everything that is good about Western civilization. They are a rot. Masquerading as its saviors, they seek to destroy Western civilization. If the West as we know it crumbles, it will be at the hands of those who claim to love it. The far right, who claim to value Western civilization, all while rejecting the Enlightenment values that define it. Western civilization as we know it is inseparable from Enlightenment values, and the far right hates these things. That is just a simple fact. There is perhaps another major philosophical force that could be regarded as a defining attribute of Western culture: Christianity. Yet many on the far right are not Christian. The far right has a strong dislike of non-white people. Jesus was probably not white, and many non-white people in the world today are Christian. Often the far right is still perfectly happy to fearmonger and demonize these people. The origins of Christianity are closely connected to the Jewish people and the Middle East, two things the radical right hate. I find it increasingly difficult to believe that when they speak of defending Western civilization, they are speaking about Christianity. Without Enlightenment values, without Christianity, what Western culture is left to defend? Paintings of the fall of Rome? No. You defend values, and the far right has no values to defend. So what else does Western civilization offer for these people to defend? How about the great philosophers, Nietzsche chief among them? The far right love Nietzsche, yet Nietzsche was a radical individualist and an advocate of individualism, a far cry from the collectivism of the radical right. Nietzsche would have looked down on the modern far right as a flock of mindless herd animals. Nietzsche was an extreme individualist, not a fanatical collectivist. The radical right does not know what Western culture is. Western culture does not really exist as an easily comprehensible singular force, and to the extent that it does, the far right is largely its enemy. Next time you hear the far right speaking about Western culture, remember this. It is difficult to identify what Western culture is, and to the extent that Western culture does exist, the far right is its enemy.